Seriously? You're joking. You have to be joking. Did you actually think I would talk about Mario's Madness because you saw a trailer for it in a video that came out on April Fool's? Well, if you did, you'd be correct. Sort of. You see, ever since Mario's Madness version 2 released, I've noticed this massive trend where people began absolutely dunking on the original mod. In my opinion, I've always found this to be absurd. Let's be real for a second, the only reason so many people were beyond excited for the release of version 2 was because of how much they loved version 1. Heck, back then, saying that any of the original 7 songs were bad, except for maybe 1, was normally treated as heresy. So it was just incredibly surprising for me when I saw loads of people nowadays hop on this bandwagon and outright claim that all the original songs were now considered terrible. So you know what? I think it's time we took a trip down memory lane and go through all the songs in Mario's Madness version 1. Also, I should mention this, no, this ranking isn't meant to critique other people's opinions, nor is it meant to be some sort of debunking video that tries to make some reasonings as to why the songs in V1 are better than their V2 counterparts. I obviously do think Mario's Madness V2, both in terms of its soundtrack and the entire mod as a whole, is a vast improvement over the original. As someone who had to take some time to warm up to the original mod and some of its tracks, I do wholeheartedly believe that some of these songs are not good. But I am not going to try and pretend that the 3 songs I did like from the original 7 are now suddenly terrible solely because their remakes exist. Are they showing their age and are now obsolete? Sure, but that doesn't mean they now have all these problems that I clearly had no issue with during the last 2 years I was listening to them before version 2 released. Anyway, ranting aside, it's time to take a quick dive into the humble beginnings of one of the greatest mods to have ever come out of this community. I'm sure everyone was expecting a certain other song from this OST to show up as the last place spot, and don't worry, we'll get to that one soon enough, because it is bad, but in my opinion, Alone is worse. This is up there as one of the most boring songs I have ever listened to from this community. I honestly don't know where to really start, because every aspect about this track is so devoid of anything, I can't think of what to actually say here. Beta Luigi's chromatic is so drab and lifeless, and yeah, you could say it's like that because he's supposed to be depressed, but even then, it's so one note and empty that it ends up just blending into the rest of the song for me. The melodies are so mundane, they're practically non-existent, consisting mostly of these slow series of long notes, and anytime the turns do use shorter ones, they have absolutely zero impact to where they can't possibly stick. The instrumental is probably the only serviceable thing about this song. While I would have preferred the track to have incorporated the sound fonts from the original Luigi's Mansion, the N64 ones are still a great substitute. That being said, this piano didn't get the memo that this is supposed to be a sad song, because it sounds way too upbeat for most of the track. Lastly, this ending is just pathetic. It basically has the 2 characters quote-unquote pop off, but it's so uninspired that the only interesting thing it does is just drop its pitch midway through the turn. And then there's this humming sound from the instrumental, which is just a laughable attempt at trying to create this spooky vibe for the song. Yeah, this track is abysmal and it's not even a question. To say this had any effort put into it feels like an absolute joke, and I seriously don't understand how this was in any way approved to be put in here. Let's just move on before I feel like falling asleep to this garbage. Now we have the song that I'm sure everyone was expecting to be in last place, and for good reason. Yeah, It's a Me is really, really bad. Well, to an extent. Starting with the instrumental, it's serviceable, I guess. It's not outright terrible. Granted, I don't like the guitar that's being used here, but other than that, the only real issue with it is that it doesn't really do anything that's worth noting, aside from that music box that plays after Mario laughs. There is this neat choir that appears near the end, however, the singing parts that play during that portion absolutely suck, thus wasting it, but more on that later. The chromatic for Super Horror Mario is fine. I think having it resemble Mario's voice is a good idea in concept, but in execution, it definitely weakens that intimidating factor the song is trying to go for. But you know what? I don't really fault the vocals for that. I do believe that if they were used in a different track, they could have definitely been implemented better. No, I think what really tanks this song for me are these god-awful melodies. A majority of It's a Me consists of these series of long notes that just go on, even having the audacity of just repeating over and over, and the shorter notes aren't much better either. The slow tempo causes them to not flow well into each other, causing the whole song to feel awkward and clunky. Honestly, this is basically just Alone, but it has more menace and intensity, which is the only reason I am putting it higher than that song, because at least there is something compared to the previous entry having nothing at all. This is such a terrible way to start off this mod, and I seriously can't wrap my head around the appeal this song had. Or has, because there are people that still think this version is not only good, but also better than version 2. Don't ask me how, your guess is as good as mine.
Hey guys, I'm Dave. Nice. Wahoo! I lied. I'm racist. Yikes. Oh no.
Race Traders. This one is all around an okay song. I don't dislike it as much as the last two tracks, but I certainly don't care for it either. The melodies are standard. I'm able to slightly groove to some of them, and I can definitely see the appeal they may have for others, even if I'm just not all that invested in them myself. The instrumental is also fine enough. For some reason, it gives me that same vibe of what would play in a cartoon, specifically during a montage where the characters are participating in some sort of competition. I think what ruins this song for me is Racist Mario's chromatic. You see, I do like the concept of his vocals being various voice clips from Mario Sunshine, as it's both funny and it can lead to very creative usages when combined with the melodies, but in the case of this track, the quality of each of the singing parts end up being inconsistent. Some turns sound good, but then you have others where Mario has his pop off, but the specific clips used don't give his notes the right amount of impact, causing these crucial moments to sound underwhelming. On top of this, I feel both Mario and BF aren't mixed well, as they sound much quieter compared to the instrumental. It's like they're trying their hardest to be audible enough so as to not get smothered by the rest of the song. Again, I don't think Race Traders is outright terrible, but there are definitely things that are hindering its potential, which ultimately caused me to not enjoy it.
We screwed up. There's no denying it. We overestimated and, yeah.
I Hate You has always been a very interesting one for me. I really tried to like this one, but I just could never get into it. That being said, this song does have its fair share of good moments. For one, I do like the melodies. They're admittedly quite catchy and fun to listen to. And of course, as someone that loves references, I adore the usage of the overworld motif from Super Mario World. The instrumental is solid enough, having a good amount of intensity that fits a character like I Hate You Luigi, and I do appreciate the inclusion of instruments with the Mario World sound font, as it gives the song some much needed flavor. Burn Luigi's chromatic is really good, easily being my favorite set of vocals for him out of any Mario Horror Brew mod. Now, despite my relatively high praise for the song, there are still some problems that really do keep the song from being amazing. For one, plenty of Luigi's notes just stop way too early, essentially cutting themselves off before the chromatic could really shine and allow the motifs to really resonate into my mind. Next, I'm not a fan of the compression. Like I said in my FNF port video, the way I normally end up not liking compressed vocals is whenever they soften the impact of a song's melodies. And that's exactly what happens here. Given how both I Hate You Luigi and BF don't sound as crisp as they really should, it does reduce the amount of force the track's singing parts try to have, which in turn weakens my investment for the song. Lastly, I Hate You has a very similar issue to something like Rapland or Scuttlebug, where the track is missing something that would give it that push it needs to truly stick in a way that would prompt me to like it. Again, similar to Race Traders, I can fully understand why people consider this one to be one of their favorites. I personally just found it to be a bit too underwhelming for my liking. Guys, we did it. We actually did it. We finally got to a Wario Apparition song that I actually like. That being said, Apparition definitely took the longest amount of time for me to warm up to out of my 3 favorites. I think what made me have reservations for this song at first was the opening. The melodies during this beginning part were overall just okay. I was able to somewhat groove to a few of the turns, but nothing more than that. I actually do like the specific chromatic used for Wario in this version. It does have this ghostly filter to obviously convey that he's an apparition, and while I did complain about Apparitionist version 2 using something similar, the difference is that this song doesn't have any sort of fast or spam-like melodies that would make it sound like complete noise. Additionally, the instrumental isn't as intense here, which makes the lack of force in all of Wario's singing parts far less egregious than what FNF Port did with its take on the character. Speaking of the instruments, not only do I like the incorporation of N64 sound fonts, but I also love how it specifically uses the ones from Bowser's songs in Mario 64, giving the track a great amount of menace. But what really makes me like Apparition is the portion after the Endless Staircase motif. The track now has some much needed energy to it, the melodies are more of a bop, Wario sounds extremely good whenever he hits those long notes, of which there are plenty of, and the instrumental just all around sounds stronger. The one thing I don't care for much though is the BF solo at the end. While the song has a lot more life to it compared to how it sounded during the first 35 seconds, I still don't think the track has enough energy to make this pop-off really stand out. If there was more emotion in the instruments or in BF's singing parts, and Wario actually did something instead of just floating there in the background, then it could truly make this ending feel a lot more satisfying. I think the things that Apparition has are good enough for me to get enjoyment out of it, but I won't deny that this song is definitely lacking stuff that would make it objectively better.
We almost have everything done, and what if you don't?
Hey, remember when GB was originally just a second form for Super Horror Mario? Yeah, those were the days. Anyway, Golden Land was another one that took some time for me to like, but when I did eventually click with it, man did I love it. I absolutely adore the first section with GB in his disguised form. Despite how short this phase is, it oozes of so much charm that I can't help but smile at it. I love how the melodies use motifs from the main theme of Mario Land 2, which is the only song I like from that game. I also just love GB's chromatic. I'll get into it more when I talk about the second phase, but I like how friendly he sounds here, which obviously fits with the overall tone of the first 2 turns. The instrumental further carries this innocent vibe, while also sounding like something that would come from an actual Game Boy game, which makes me appreciate it all the more. But then comes the second phase when GB reveals himself. This whole part is an absolute blast that I love to death. I really enjoy the faster tempo as it makes all the melodies super catchy and prompts me to repeatedly bounce in my seat just from how much energy the song now gives off. I find the guitar that now plays in the instrumental to just be super satisfying and enjoyable, giving the overall track this intensity that doesn't feel super menacing, but still gives it a serious enough tone with tons of impact. The instruments also remind me a lot of those older Mario videos, such as stuff like Mario Bros. Z, where something like this would play during some sort of big fight scene. Additionally, GB's chromatic during this portion sounds incredible. I feel it actually succeeds in what the vocals for Super Horror Mario failed to do. where it resembles something that would fit a character that is meant to be Mario, while also not weakening that intimidating factor of the song. Overall, this is a massive step up from the previous entries on this list. I wish that other songs from this OST had this same level of quality, because the amount of enjoyment I had from Golden Land outshines whatever fun I had gotten from any of the other tracks that make up this mod. Well, aside from one particular song. Remember when I said before Mario's Madness version 2, Heroes Doom was my second favorite Mario Horror Brew song? Well, say hello to the original number 1 spot. Yeah, Power Down is easily the best song in this OST, and it's not even a contest, it's not even a question, and it's not up for debate. This one took the shortest amount of time for me to like, and I can definitely see why. This whole song feels like you're fighting against some sort of final boss, which I think is very befitting for someone like MX. Speaking of whom, I absolutely love his chromatic. I already mentioned before how I adore deep guttural sets of vocals, so these were right up my alley. They are the embodiment of pure power and intensity. It really sets that dreadful and almost frightening tone that no other song in this mod was able to really capture. The melodies are phenomenal. Any sort of turn that includes those iconic long notes just oozes of menace, and you can feel the tension of the song escalate anytime it decides to switch it up and use faster rhythms. And the instrumental just sounds so bleak and serious, being vastly different from the ones used for any of the other tracks, further adding on to that feeling of imposing danger. But the best part about this song is by far the ending. The way the track winds down to its seemingly lowest point, where MX then says his iconic "innocence doesn't get you far" line, before he goes wahoo and the music just comes back in full throttle, being fiercer, stronger, and all around more aggressive than ever before. All that energy the song was slowly building up can finally let loose, creating something that is not only a fantastic closure, but also something that perfectly represents a core aspect of the character that this track is for. All in all, Power Down is amazing. It is a song that I can't help but love and appreciate, and is honestly the core reason why I never believe anyone that says, oh, the entire soundtrack of Mario's Madness version 1 is bad. And as long as this exists, I don't think I will ever take that claim seriously. And so that was Mario's Madness version 1. Yeah, I'm not going to try and pretend that this OST is great, and if you don't believe me, just take a look at the tier list. I was never truly a fan of this soundtrack when it first released, and in fact, considering how this would be one of the first instances of an FNF mod involving Mario Horror Brew stuff, I was very disappointed that this was what we got back then. Regardless, as I said before, I don't think all of these songs are outright terrible as a lot of people like to claim. While I'm not planning on listening to these again anytime soon after this ranking, I won't deny I still think some of them, specifically my favorites, are good. As a matter of fact, I dare say that tracks like the original Golden Land and Power Down are still better than some of the new stuff that arrived when version 2 released. I know that is definitely a hot take and I'm gonna get a lot of hate for saying that, but you know what? I don't care. While I do think the songs here are clearly outdated and are deserving of criticism, I also feel they get way too much hate than they really deserve. But anyway, that's about it for this video. This one was just a fun little thing I wanted to do, basically to act as an appetizer before the main course. So I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did making it. And yes, don't worry, I will still be going over Mario's Madness V2, though that video is still going to take some time before it can be ready, so just be patient with me. Until then, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all when we begin the next event for Mario's March Madness. And yes, I know it's April and it will probably be May when the next video releases, but shh! See you guys then.